Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the First Brick Property Podcast. Now, this episode is an amazing episode we've recorded with a very, very special guest. The episode itself has been about a year in the making. It's taken us a little bit of time to get these guys on to the podcast, and simply because they're huge, absolutely huge. We put up a post yesterday calling this episode Hugeness. And it really is. We're really excited when we got the go-ahead that they would come onto the podcast. Very educational episode, a lot of learning, a lot of things that people may not have known about. And a huge thank you to our guests for coming on and recording that podcast with us. It really, really was amazing episode. So thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoy it. Stay tuned and let us know what you think of this episode. Here it is. Another episode of the First Brick Property Podcast. Today we've got a very, very special guest joining us today. This episode has been in the works for about 1 year. Not to my guest's knowledge, which I just found out, but just trying to time everything with these guys, and it's taken a year, and I'm really excited. When I got the go ahead, I've never been so excited to talk about tax in my life. So super excited for this episode. It's going to be a really good episode. My guest today comes from the biggest tax depreciation company in the land in Australia. So my guest is from BMT Tax Depreciation, and his name is Chris Palagy. I hope I got that one right. Chris, how are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you for having us. And no, it is a pleasure to be here. I didn't realize this was so long in the making, but no, I'm of course very happy to be here, and very happy to get excited about tax depreciation as well. Yes.
You have no idea how excited I am. I am one of the original co-hosts with me is an accountant and works at the ATO. And once I got the go ahead that this was happening, I messaged him straight away. I said, "Mate, I got BMT on, and it's a shame that you're not going to be part of it. Unlucky for you." And just rubbing salt in the wounds. Rubbing salt in the wounds there. So I am super excited to have you on. And thank you so much for your time to be on this show.
You are welcome.
So, Chris, I guess the purpose of the podcast is to educate our listeners about the ins and outs of the property world, investing or buying houses to live in, or properties to live in, residential, commercial, and everything. But it's a very beginner's kind of 101 podcast. And something that we haven't spoken about yet at all on this pod is tax depreciation. It's kind of been mentioned, but we never got into it. And there's obviously no one better to talk about it than you, I guess. So I guess today we'll just ask some pretty basic, or maybe not so basic questions to some, but to really understand the nitty gritty about what is tax depreciation. Why should people be claiming it, and all the rest? So I guess my first question is, what is depreciation, and who can claim it, and why should investors or why should people be claiming depreciation?
A very good question to start with. Look, the way I start for those on the entry level, the 101 stuff is that I bring into it a car, and a car that you use for business. Now, when you use a car for business, you can claim on the imagined wear and tear, and it doesn't matter how good a condition the car remains in. You can claim a tax deduction that represents the loss of value through wear and tear. And for a car, that's pretty simple because, when you're doing your tax return, you log the kilometers that you've driven in it and the type of vehicle counts, and the ATO lets you calculate that pretty easily. This is the same principle, but a little bit more complicated because buildings too, and not only buildings, but commercial fit out and everything from office equipment to furniture and other things that you would use both as a residential and a commercial property operator. experience that imagined wear and tear. And this is a deduction that investors and commercial property owners, business owners can claim based on that imagined wear and tear. Now, you put that into your tax return each year, and that deduction gives you increased cash flow. So it's a pretty, when people say, well, why should you claim it? Well, the answer is pretty straightforward there, because it helps people make more money from their property. And if you're a property investor, if you're a business owner, well, you're in it to make money, and this claim will let you do it. So it's also what we like to refer to as hidden cash flow, because unlike a lot of things where you have to keep spending money on things to claim deductions for them, once you buy a property and once you arrange that depreciation schedule, it's more or less set and forget for the most part. It outlines the deductions into the future, and all you need to do is enter a couple of figures into your tax return each year, and that's your claim all sorted out. So yeah, you don't need to keep outlaying for a depreciation schedule every year. It's a document that gives you a projection.
Yeah, cool. That's the perfect explanation. That was really good. I guess that brings me on. I mean, the natural next question will be, okay, well, that sounds great, Chris. How do I claim it? How do I claim the depreciation? How does it work? Does my accountant sort it out, or do I? How does that work?
Yeah, well, that's actually one of our frequently asked questions is, doesn't my accountant look after that? And the answer is only, well, sort of. The truth of the matter is that in 99% of cases, an accountant can't sort out the depreciation themselves. And that's because it relies on an estimation of costs. Now, BMT, we are a quantity surveying firm. And if people don't know what a quantity surveyor is, well, that's pretty standard, and most people don't. It is a construction cost estimator. We're construction cost estimators. We specialise in construction management, and sort of branch out from there into the cost estimation, and it's a pretty niche profession. But it's one that's required to come up with a depreciation schedule, because a lot of the time, even if people have, say, paid a contract price to a builder to put up a house or an office, something like that, they don't know the full breakdown of all of the costs there. And so it's up to us to look at the property and make that estimation and put it into that document, which is known as a tax depreciation schedule. And it will outline all of the different asset values in there and chart that wear and tear. So actually claiming it is a matter of whether you do your own tax return or you use a tax agent. Once you've got the documentation, once you've got us to actually go out and inspect a property and cost it all up, it is a simple matter there of just putting a couple of figures into your tax return. So an accountant will help with the process. In fact, accountants are our biggest referring sector, and a lot of the time we need to consult with them to make sure we are actually getting the best result based on somebody's personal circumstances. They might have a tax position that requires a little bit of consultation, and to make sure we're structuring things right for them. But we work with them, and they, at the end of the day, will usually be the person who is putting our figures into the investor's tax return.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for that one. Okay, so I think a common question, I would guess that this would be a common question that you might receive. There's the conception that, or the understanding that depreciation schedule is only worth getting on a new property or newer properties. So I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, it may not be a common question, but I would guess it would be. Is it worth getting the tax depreciation schedule done for older properties?
And that is very much a common question. It's number 2 on the FAQ list. And I've been with BMT over 8 years now. and it's like a wildfire that we keep trying to put out. This rumor that you can't claim depreciation on old properties, and there's also a bit of a misunderstanding on what old actually is as well.
Yeah.
So to break it down, if we're talking residential properties, for we quantity surveyors, old for a residential property is older than 1987, and for commercial properties in general, 1982. So let's just say, for sake of example, it's before the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Now, people think, oh, well, my house is older than that. I can't depreciate it. Some people will even think a 10-year-old house is old, and that's just not old at all.
Yeah.
Certainly not for us. But it's never a case of a building being too old in isolation, because I've seen amazing deductions on houses that are 100 years old. And the reason for that is because people are getting all hung up on the original construction date of the house. But the older a property is, the more likely it is to have had some decent renovations performed to it. So really, I mean, if we keep it sort of to residential properties, just for sake of example, I say, look, if a property is older than 1987 and has had some renovations performed on it, then it's definitely worth at least checking out. And usually anything that was built after 1987 for a residential property is worth it by default. Now, the rules are a little bit different when it comes to commercial properties. They're a bit more complicated, but what we find with those is that age a lot of the time is even less of a factor, because of the way that we can revalue some of the things that are in the commercial properties and give great results even on old sheds. They might have some air conditioning and fire safety equipment there, and it doesn't matter how old they are, we can revalue them when they're purchased. But it's very rarely a case of a property just being too old, because there's usually other factors that might still warrant a depreciation schedule and actually mean that there's a good claim there to make.
Yeah, cool. So myth busted, I guess. So if it's old in your mind, it might not be old in terms of at BMT. So they might find you some money still. So definitely don't just write it off if you think if you just assume it's too old. Is the take home on that one, I think.
Yeah, it's always worth at least asking the question. I mean, if at the end of the day you spend 5 minutes on the phone with us and we say, sorry, there's nothing for you here, that's a better outcome than if you've actually got a property where there's a lot to claim and you make the incorrect assumption and you lose money through doing that. So
yeah, definitely, especially if it's only, like you said, like a 10-year-old property. You still got a bit of depreciation left in that property. Still got a bit to go. So money to be saved. Definitely.
yeah, I mean, most buildings have a 40-year lifespan. So, that 10-year-old property, it's still got 3 decades to claim on it, and you'd be claiming thousands every year. Even a place that was built in 1990, I mean, you've still got 10 years roughly on its original construction to claim, and B, it's probably had some renovations that we can value as well. It doesn't matter if you as the owner did the renovations. It doesn't matter if it was 2 owners ago. As long as it was after those key dates, we can put a value on them.
Yeah, beautiful. So, well, I guess we mentioned renovation a few times there. So let's talk about that. So how does the depreciation schedule work when an investor has done a renovation on their property, or if someone else has done a renovation and then you've come along and purchased it? Does it work differently? How does that work?
Yeah, well, I'll start, I guess, with the second scenario there. You buy a property and somebody else has renovated it. Now, of course, you're probably not going to know what they spent on renovation costs. And that's fine, because just like we can with the actual building itself, we can go in and estimate the cost of those renovations too. Now, if you are talking about a property that you have renovated yourself, then we have to ask you for your costs, and that's not something that we're saying has to happen. It's something that the ATO says has to happen. So where the costs are known, we should be using them. Now, there are a variety of circumstances in where the costs, might not be available, but usually they are, and the owner of the property is responsible for that. But to start with, say if we've got a property, you might have that 1990 property. So we can claim on the original construction, and somebody's bought that and they decide to renovate it for rental. And we will ask them for their costs, and we will use those costs. So we estimate the original construction cost, and then we add on top of those the costs that the current owner has given us for that. Now, another advantage to doing a renovation on a property is that because of laws that came in 2017, if you buy a property and it's already got carpet in it, blinds, appliances, etc., you can't claim on those things now if they're secondhand. It doesn't matter who's used them before, whether it's a previous owner occupier or a tenant. Maybe even you, as the owner occupier, you've used those things before and moved out to make it a rental. If they've been used before, you can't claim on them. But if you buy a property and you renovate it for the purposes of making it a rental property, you can claim on those things like appliances and floor coverings and curtains and blinds, etc. So that's an advantage to buying a property and then renovating it. There are a few rules around that. Another deduction that you can claim, it's a depreciation claim of another sort called scrapping. Now, there are rules around scrapping. And I could easily talk for half an hour about scrapping alone because it's that complicated. And obviously, when people talk to us about it, we need to make it as simple as possible. But scrapping is a deduction. It's a one-off deduction that you can claim from things that you remove from a property that are already being depreciated. Now, to give you an example, let's say you've got a property where it's a house. It was built in the year 2000, so it's about halfway through its 40-year lifespan, but you want to change the kitchen in it. Scrapping is a deduction that, say, when you get rid of those kitchen cabinets and the sink and the splashback, etc., you might be taking up some tiles, all of that sort of stuff. There's 2 decades worth of value left in that, and you can write that all off as a scrapping deduction. It's a one-off claim on top of the depreciation that you will have claimed up until that point and following that point as well, because you're going to be putting a new kitchen in there and claiming depreciation on that. And the way I like to frame it is that it's a partial rebate for people's renovation costs, because of course renovation costs are always going to blow out. They're always going to be higher than what you think they're going to be. So having a little bit of relief in the form of an extra tax deduction on the things that you pull out of there is generally going to be welcome for people. Now, I do stress that, again, not only is it complicated, but there are rules around it. Ideally, people, I think, it's a good idea to get in touch with us at least a few weeks out from any planned renovations, just to see whether it's something that they're eligible for, and make sure we can actually go. Because what we actually generally have to do is value things before they're taken out of the property, because we can't value all of the kitchen cabinets if they're a heap of rubble at the local tip. Yeah. So it's generally a before and after thing. But yeah, there are a few things to think about when renovating. When it comes to depreciation, we can always give further advice on that based on people's individual scenario.
Yeah, for sure. That scrapping, it's a definitely that's a big benefit, and like you said, a welcome help to the renovators, because as you mentioned, everyone puts a budget, and then halfway through your renovation, you've already passed your budget, and you're thinking, oh, I still got to finish. I still got to put a toilet in there. I still got to. Otherwise, it's just an empty building site. just regarding the renovations, if, for example, if someone has purchased a property that's relatively new, and then they've done their tax depreciation schedule, 15 years later, 20 years later, whatever it is, they decide they want to gut the property and then do a renovation. Is it a matter of just getting another depreciation schedule done? Is that just as simple as that, or?
Oh, well, usually, and look, short answer, it depends. Usually, if people are renovating, I mean, most cosmetic renovations are such that we will be able to get a cost breakdown and we will be able to update the original depreciation schedule. So it's not really a new depreciation schedule. We just soup up the old one. Whereas if it's something a little bit more complex, like a knockdown rebuild or even a full gutting of the property to completely reconfigure it, and essentially everything except for the shell is new, then yeah, in that case we might need a fresh depreciation schedule there. But of course, in such cases, usually there could be a scrapping deduction as a byproduct of that. It depends on the property how much, but we take each situation as it comes. But changes to the property generally require some updating of the depreciation schedule, or even simple things can be depreciated on their own. So if you put in, new carpet, it's got an 8-year lifespan, and people can just do it themselves. You don't need to estimate the costs for that because you've got it there on your invoice. So,
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, awesome. My next question, I guess, someone, tomorrow when this goes live, or next week or next year, or whenever someone listens to this, might be thinking, this tax depreciation thing is amazing. Why haven't I done this before? Why hasn't anyone told me about it? There's thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars left on the table. But I bought my property 5 years ago and I'm only hearing about it now. What can investors do if they've been missing out on depreciation or claiming depreciation? Like someone's listening to this and thinking, oh, can I go back and claim on depreciation? Can you backdate it?
Well, not only can you backdate the depreciation schedule, but depreciation schedules, we backdate them by default. So our depreciation schedules start from the earliest possible claim, and what you're talking about is such a common scenario because, of course, depreciation being this kind of obscure thing, even there are even some tax accountants out there who aren't all over it. And yeah, it's a common scenario. Somebody might change their tax agent and their new tax agent might say, where's your depreciation schedule? And the owner says, the depreciation what now? And it turns out that they might have been renting this property for a few years without making the claim, and essentially, handing over thousands of dollars extra to the ATO on a silver platter. So yes, our reports will be backdated to the earliest possible claim. Now, how far back can people go? The general rule is that you can amend any tax returns that you've submitted in the last couple of years. So, it might not be, say, if you've been, missing the deductions for a decade, might be a little bit beyond our control. The figures will be there. Whether you can make an adjustment back that far is another matter. But, it is also worth talking to a tax agent about special consideration. I know that in some cases you can get special consideration to go back further than the standard 2 years. But even if it's just 2 years, then you could be conceivably getting 2 or 3 tax returns worth of depreciation refunded to you all in one go, and that's probably going to be pretty good as it is.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. Just while you're mentioning, backdating and amending, and I just had a quick, maybe a bit of a fun question. What kind of figures have you seen on a depreciation schedule in terms of, deductions? I mean, are we talking tens of thousands? Are we talking a couple thousands? Are we talking the hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, look, I often think of depreciation schedules as being like snowflakes or fingerprints. They're unique. Every property will have something different about it, and that could end up changing the claim, even if it's only a little bit. To give you a bit of an example, and we'll talk about residential properties because the spectrum of commercial properties is so wide that it's impossible to get like an average, and even certain sized offices might have completely different fit outs. So, but let's talk residential properties just because it's easier to give an average. Across the 2020 financial year, the average deduction that we found across all residential properties was just under $9,000 in deductions. So of course that means that, and that's across all properties, no matter how old, no matter how big, small, etc. So you could, conceivably, it depends on the age of the property, how big it is, the level of renovations, is it new, is it secondhand? All of those factors will go towards what the total claim will be, and if we're talking long term, it's going to be based on the total construction cost of it. So, take an apartment building, for example, the claim on a 1-bedroom unit is going to be quite different from a 3-bedroom unit because not only is it smaller and will have a lower construction cost, but it will also, if it's on a strata, it will have a smaller claim over the common area. And you can claim on a percentage of the common area as well. And you might have a common area that is quite complex. It could have multiple lifts and several stories of underground parking and security systems and pools and gyms and all of that. And so, there's such a huge amount of variety there. But even those older properties with decent renovations to them, you might find $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year in deductions, just depending on what's been done to them. And even that is enough to put $1,000 or more in an investor's pocket after each year's claim. And not many people are going to say no, even to an extra $1,000. Yeah. So.
No, most people will be. I'd be jumping at it. It's at the end of the day, it's a significant amount of money being left on the table. If we're not engaging with our depreciation schedules and making sure they're updated or getting them done at all. So yeah, that's quite interesting to note. Someone might be listening again, thinking, okay, well, I'm convinced this depreciation thing seems legit. It's a really good idea. I should definitely be getting one. When should an investor start thinking about obtaining a depreciation schedule? Is that as soon as they purchased a property, or before, or 6 months later, or what's the kind of time frame?
Right. Well, how on the ball are you? So, look, I look. Don't be like me. Don't wake up in the middle of the night and start thinking about depreciation. Don't dream of depreciation, but keep it. I guess at least keep it in mind when you are looking for an investment property, because it is something that you can use to crunch the numbers. And if you're trying to do a cash flow projection for a potential purchase, then of course depreciation is something that could factor in heavily to that. I mean, you could be talking about thousands of dollars extra per year in cash flow. So it's always good to take it into account when you're doing your cash flow projections. We have actually a cash flow calculator both on our website and also available as an app where you can put in all of the expected incomings, outgoings, purchase price, the rent, et cetera, et cetera. And of course the depreciation estimate, preliminary estimate, which I'll get to in a moment. But once you do that, it can give you an idea of cash flow. So by all means, I'm not going to go out and, as biased as I am towards the benefits of depreciation, I'm never going to say, well, look, it should be the reason you buy a particular property. But it can make for some pretty tasty icing on the cake there. And so using it there in those cash flow projections is always a good idea. Now, in terms of when you actually make a commitment to buy the property, I mean, there's no, I guess, problem with starting to arrange something as soon as you can see the settlement date upcoming, because if you do that, a lot of the time, we can get in and do an inspection of the property reasonably quickly after it settles. You'll be prepared for tax time. Our fee is a tax deductible amount as well, so it's a claimable amount for the financial year in which we receive it. So that's something that people often like to think about leading up to the 30th of June. But essentially, at the end of the day, you want to at least have it done in time to do your first tax return after purchasing an investment property.
Yeah, beautiful. That's very much in line with what we tell our customers. As soon as we've purchased the investment for them, we've pretty much tell them on the phone, call BMT and get it done, because like you said, sooner the better. You're getting your deductions quicker, and you get some claims and a bit of money back. So why delay? Just a couple more questions. Pretty, I think, important one is, how can an investor find out if it's worth getting a depreciation schedule completed? I mean, I know we've kind of touched on it already about, most properties will probably have something, especially if it's been renovated, even if it's old or whatnot. But how can you really know if it's worth getting one done?
Super easy, barely an inconvenience. All you need to do is, you can call out 1300 number. I mean, we can usually tell people, and this is all obligation free, of course. We can usually tell people within a few minutes of whether a property has a viable claim to it there, because you get on the line with us, give us the address, we're on the internet straight away. Looking at listing pictures, we have access to historical data, so we can probably tell how old it is. Usually within 5 minutes, we could probably give you an idea of what kind of claim there is. Now, if you don't want to get on the phone, that's fine. There's a form on our website that you can use. And also, even if you're a good multitasker, there's a live chat facility on our website too.
Yeah.
So we don't want to make it difficult for people. It usually is just a matter of providing us with that address. Now, we might have a couple of questions if our searches are, sort of inconclusive, but generally a lot of the time, I mean, I can tell just by looking whether something's going to have a good claim to it or not.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're in the game for a little bit of time. But I can attest to that as well. The amount of times I've picked up the phone and just called you guys and said, "Hey, looking at this property, what do you reckon? Any depreciation on it?" And like you said, within a minute or two, they've had a look and quickly said, "Yeah, there's going to be some money there," or just no, it's old, not been renovated, there's nothing left on it, or very minimal amounts anyway. So it's very friendly, like you said, no obligation. They're just 2 minutes on the phone. And yeah, it's very handy tool to have at your disposal for anyone that's looking to get one done. My last question, probably a very straightforward question. I've decided I want to get a depreciation schedule. How do I organise one?
Okay, I guess this follows on pretty well from the last one. I mean, some people, we get them on the phone and we're like, well, it looks like this is a new house. You've built it, and there's probably what $13,000 in deductions in your first year, and they'll just say, sign me up. And usually we can work out things pretty easily over the phone there. Now, we don't sort of want to keep people on the phone too long. So from there, it becomes a process where we have to start gathering information. So we'll generally send an email out with a questionnaire in it, but we've also got an online portal for our clients called My BMT. So people can create a profile on that and just upload the information, put in what their settlement date and purchase price was. And if they've got a spreadsheet of renovation costs, they can upload that straight to us. My BMT is also, you can access sort of like an electronic version of your depreciation schedule when it's all done. And there are some other investor tools in there as well that people find useful. But we can also do things over the phone and via email, and just get a few of those official details that we need, like the names that are on the title. Now, the other part of it is that we need to arrange an inspection of the property, and we want to do as much of that for you as possible. So if you have a property manager looking after the place, then of course we will get their details from you, and chances are we've already dealt with them a number of times. They know what the deal is, and they will help us sort out a suitable time with the tenant. Most residential properties, the inspection's about 30 to 45 minutes. And of course, we aim to make that painless for people, be as unintrusive as possible. So between those two approaches of information gathering, and of course, we have access to a lot of the historical data, but we still need to check it a lot of the time. And also arranging that inspection. Generally, once those two things are fulfilled, you've got your depreciation schedule, and we can, of course, send it directly to your tax agent as well.
Yeah, beautiful. That's very straightforward, very easy. Just quickly, BMT covers the entire nation, so wherever you are, wherever anyone is, they will be able to access BMT. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, we do service the entirety of Australia, and that includes regional areas. It can take us maybe a little bit longer to get to some regional areas. Most population centres, we can get to, if they're sort of larger regional areas, usually every 4 weeks or so, we'll be sending somebody on a tour to do the inspections. Bit more remote, maybe every 6 to 8 weeks. But, we've been everywhere. We've been to islands off the Queensland coast. We've been to Nhulunbuy, Northern Territory, Newman, WA. We've been far and wide, and we don't. If it is a standard residential property, we don't charge extra for that. We try to be democratic with that, and it can take us a little while longer there, but we will get there, and we will. And part of the reason for that is we believe that it's important to perform an inspection, not only an inspection, but an inspection by a BMT staff member. We don't outsource any part of it. We don't want there to be a broken chain of responsibility, because heaven forbid, if something goes wrong, we need to get onto that. We don't want to be passing the buck to somebody that we've subcontracted out to. At the end of the day, this is a legal document that we are producing. Everything that's in it, we need to be able to verify. If the ATO ever asks us to, we've got to be able to do that. And in our years of operation, we've been around since '97. In our years of operation, we've never had any issues in doing that. We want to keep it that way.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You mentioned real quick, sorry, that you do the tours in the regional areas. People listening to this only and not watching the video won't see that you're wearing a very nice suit. Are you heading out on these property tours as well, or you sitting in the office?
I am. I'm an in-office guy. I can tell you, you don't want me personally inspecting your properties. I haven't really caused any property damage myself, but I'm clumsy. I'm slow. I've dropped cameras and other equipment belonging to BMT. It would be a comedy of errors. So I tend to do a lot of the in-office stuff and send the more capable, less clumsy people to do the inspections. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
it's good to hear. And we don't want to be you don't want to be breaking someone else's property.
I know my
It belongs
limits.
to you.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That was really good. I really appreciate it. You've clearly you've been on a few podcasts before because that was very smooth sailing. Um, Thank you so much for coming on. Um, if anyone wants to reach you or find what's the website, what are the numbers, how do they get in contact?
Sure thing. Well, look, our phone number is 1300 728 726. We've got a dozen offices around the country. So when we're doing those regional tours, sometimes we don't have too far to go. And of course, our website is www.bmtqs.com.au, and that's BMT, our company initials, and QS for quantity surveyors. bmtqs.com.au, and we've got a whole host of information there. We've got those calculators that you can play around with, and lots of articles about the ins and the outs. If you want to learn more about the scrapping deductions or the commercial property deductions, it's all there, as well as, of course, a handy link to start a chat with us or request a quote.
Yeah, beautiful, amazing. Well, we'll put all your details in the show notes as well. So if anyone is trying to find them, they'll be there. Also, yeah, just a personal, I guess, review. I've used BMT on all my properties and all our customers' properties. We straight away recommend BMT. A top job every single time. Very quick, very reliable, amazing stuff. And the guys on the phone very helpful as well whenever we just have a quick question. So highly recommend BMT. They're not paying me anything to say this, but we highly recommend them anyway. And thank you again so much, Chris, for being on. Really do appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
I did.
We're not the biggest podcast out there. We're not the biggest property podcast. But yeah, we do have a good listening, a good base, a good following, and hopefully they've enjoyed it. And hopefully maybe we'll get you on again. Maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper into the reports and what they like.
It would be a pleasure. No, thank you for having me on. I've had a good time, and it's always a pleasure to, I guess, spread the word about depreciation. And hopefully there are investors out there who have seen this and might just find their cash flow greatly increased. So we'd love to hear from them if we can help out with that. Yeah.
Beautiful. No worries. Well, thank you for joining us again. I know I've taken a lot of your time, so I'll let you go. And hopefully we'll talk soon again. Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Wow. What an episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I really did enjoy it. It was an amazing episode. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, BMT, for your time and for allowing us to do this. And thank you for coming onto our pod. As mentioned, all the show notes will be in the show notes. All the links to websites and numbers and all the rest will be there. If you need to get in touch with BMT regarding getting a depreciation schedule report done, you'll know where to find them. An amazing episode. If you're looking for any of our content, you can find it on the usual places: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We are everywhere. If you enjoy the podcast and if you want to help us keep getting these amazing guests on, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a review, whatever platform. If you're on the Apple platform, Apple iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Just scroll down to the bottom, click 5-star, give us a small review. Let us know what you think. And these reviews really helps us get big guests on. And we're trying to keep expanding and get really good guests on. Thank you to everyone that listens. Thank you to everyone that's been following us for a little while. Pass the pod. Let one person know that you think would enjoy this podcast. Tell them about the pod, and hopefully we'll keep growing. We do have some big exciting news coming soon as well, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you, and buying property is our passion. Helping you do it is our mission. See ya.